Hello and welcome to the World Wanderers podcast, your source for travel stories, travel destinations, and travel philosophy.
I'm Amanda.
I'm Ryan.
And we're your hosts.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the World Wanderers podcast. Before we jump in, just want to let you know that if you are a fan of the show and you want to connect with us in some other ways, get some cool World Wanderers bonuses, you can support the show on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/theworldwanderers and you can find out about the rewards we have for supporters and what we put our Patreon support to use for.
And as always, thanks so much for your support. And so on today's episode of the podcast, we're talking about the 1 week that we had in Seoul, South Korea. So we only had a week there. It was the last week of our 8-month Asia adventure before we headed back to Canada. And so there's so much to see in South Korea, but we only got the chance to actually visit Seoul. So this episode really talks about that and focuses on our experiences there. And so I think a great place to start is talking about what our initial expectations for Seoul were. And after feeling kind of disappointed when we arrived in Taiwan, I really lowered my expectations for Seoul. I had actually read a blog that somebody had written that was kind of like why Japan ruined every other Asian country for me. And it was talking about how going to Tokyo was this experience that was so amazing that moving to Seoul afterwards really made the experience there really disappointing. So going in, I actually had really low expectations for Seoul. I kind of felt like, okay, I had this great experience in Japan. Every other country after that is ruined because Japan set the bar so high. But I was actually really pleasantly surprised with Seoul. What were your initial expectations about Seoul, Ryan?
So we got to Seoul late at night. Quite late at night. I think it was close to midnight. And we were staying at a kind of backpackers hotel outside of the city center. So it was actually kind of interesting. We got off a bus and then had to walk a little bit to get to where our hotel was. And we're walking through some of these streets. And it was kind of one of those feelings where you're like, everything's dark, everything's shuttered up. There's a few people around, but they kind of look weird. Like, did we walk into a dangerous area? Should we have researched if there's danger here? So that was a bit interesting. But then the next day we got up and it was beautiful, sunny, blue sky, and went around the city a little bit, saw some areas and went up to the top of the Seoul Tower, not the top of the Seoul Tower, the mountain that the Seoul Tower is based on, and had some amazing views. And we were like, okay, wow, this is a really good first impression of this city. And I think we got really lucky because it was spring, so it could well have been cold. And there could have been a lot of pollution or other things, but we got beautiful, beautiful weather.
Yeah, it was really interesting when we arrived. People kept saying to us, you're so lucky that you came now because, you know, the yellow dust can be really bad. And I kept being like, what's the yellow dust? Is that just pollution? But I think that on top of the pollution that South Korea has in their own country, plus the pollution that comes from China, there's also, I guess, this yellow sand that kind of comes from the desert, kind of via Mongolia. So some days it can be really, really smoggy and the air quality can be really bad and just super unpleasant to experience. So I was really grateful that we showed up during a week where the weather was absolutely gorgeous and the air quality was really good. And I just feel like that can make all the difference in your experience of a place. And I feel like with Seoul, it really started us out on the right foot for having a really, really great week. So we are going to start this episode on day 2 of our adventures in Seoul.
Hey guys, we are joining you from Seoul, South Korea today. Today is our second day in Seoul. It's a beautiful blue sky day. There's some nice, fun Korean music in the background. And we are headed off to explore a different area of the city. So we are staying in Dongdaemun, which is an area with a big retail market and a wholesale market, one of the more popular shopping districts. But I don't think like the fashion shopping you would think of when you think Korean fashion. And everywhere seems to be connected by the subway. So yesterday we explored the area of Itaewon and took the Seoul bus around the city, checked out the Seoul Tower on the hill, and we've gotten a pretty good vibe from Seoul so far. What have been some of your observations in this first 48 hours that we've been here?
Yeah, so with the area of the town we're staying, at least, the language barrier has been quite an obstacle here. We went around trying to find SIM cards yesterday, and every shop we went into, nobody spoke any English whatsoever. Obviously, we don't speak Korean, so it's been a bit of a challenge that way. Really big city, not too dissimilar from other big Asian cities that we visited. It was a beautiful day here yesterday, again today though, so we went in the afternoon on one of those hop-on, hop-off tour buses just to get a lay of the land, see what's around Seoul, and it goes up to the top of a mountain right in the center of town where the Seoul Tower is. And just had a spectacular view, and off as far as you can see in every direction is city with occasional mountains here and there. So yeah, very big, very lively, interesting city.
Yeah, and so we are here for 1 week, which is not very long for us. Normally we spend a little bit longer in places, but we just have 1 week here, so we still have to balance our work tasks and duties with exploring, but we are making a priority to see as much of the city as we possibly can. So we'll check in a little bit later.
So we mentioned this in the next clip that you're going to hear, but our first couple of days went by super fast. We had a stay at Hotel Maui, which we have a hotel review up on the website about, and that was our hotel in Dongdaemun, and we had 3 nights there, and then we had to move places. And so one of the things we like to do is to kind of stay in places for a little bit longer, because checkout times are usually around like 10, 11, 12 in the morning. And then check-in times are usually not until at least 2. And so when you have to check in and out on the same day, it kind of almost takes up your whole day, because you have to do this packing in the morning, clean up, you move, and then you've inevitably got this extra chunk of time where you can't quite check in yet. And so our 3rd day in Seoul was mostly that. It was us checking out of our one place. It was making our way from Dongdaemun over to Seoul Station area, hanging at Starbucks for a couple of hours before we were able to check into our new apartment. And so the next time that we check in with you is from the start of day 3. Our time here has been passing really, really quickly, and I feel like we haven't done very much so far. We stayed in the area of Dongdaemun our first 3 nights and then moved over to a more central location right by Seoul Station. And today we're heading out on a bit of an adventure. We're going to go check out the Seoul Fortress, and we only have a week here, so I feel like there's a lot to do in just a week, and we've gotten kind of used to spending more time in places, so we move at a very relaxed pace. We spend lots of time doing work, but Seoul has been good so far, and so we will check in with you a little bit later.
So the end of day 4 here in Seoul, and it was one of our first days where we actually dedicated the entire day to going out and exploring. We met up with a friend, Tanya, who took us on a excursion up to the Seoul Fortress Wall.
Yeah, so Tanya is a friend that we know through Carolyn McPherson, who's been on the podcast before. Carolyn knows Tanya from when they both lived in Seoul together, and Carolyn has lived in a number of different countries since living in Seoul, or a number of different cities and countries since living in Seoul, South Korea, and Tanya has lived here for going on 9 years, so she's been here for quite a long time, and is really exciting because got to meet up with her in Bali, and now we're here in her home city, and she took us to see the Seoul Fortress, which is a fortress wall that goes around the entire city. So she said you could walk an entire day. We just walked an interesting part of it for a couple of hours, but we got quite a bit of elevation. Like, we walked up into the mountains and had a fantastic view of Seoul one direction and then the mountains in the other direction.
Yeah, so Seoul's really, or one cool thing about Seoul is that although it's a big, vast Asian city, there are a number of mountains kind of like pot-marking it around. So there's lots of opportunities to go, even with what it feels like you're in the city, but to kind of like get your head up above it. So you can spend a few hours walking around in the trees, seeing the sun out of the city, and kind of feel like you're mentally getting a break, even though you're pretty centrally located still. And then another interesting thing about the Seoul Fortress Wall in particular, like you said, it goes all the way around the city, but at least the section we were on
part of it's kind of like been converted into like a military, for military use, I guess, because, you know, Seoul is so close to North Korea. At least part of the sections of the wall now have barbed wire, and there's like military guards, and you have to check in to actually go up there and walk on it. So it's kind of an interesting experience.
Yeah, and then there's lots of areas that you're actually not allowed to take photos. So it's mostly the areas that face towards the mountains. So Tanya was telling us that there's a ton of, you know, military watches and setups in the mountains, and that it's a heavily guarded area. And it's interesting for us to see, because I think it's something that we're just not very used to. And then also you hear so much about North Korea in the news. You hear so much about it, and then it's really interesting to be in Seoul for the first time and to be like, whoa, we're really close to that. And, oh, there's like military watchtowers that are watching towards these mountains.
Yeah, and it was cool going with Tanya because she knows all these little areas. So we finished walking on the wall and came out, and she's like, oh, there's a really cool cafe just around the corner over here. So she showed us over to this great cafe. We had coffee and a snack. And then we went down to Myungdong, which I may be mispronouncing. But that's one of the kind of trendier, cool areas of Seoul, and we had a great meal and got some potatoes on a stick after dinner.
Yeah, it's called Potato Tornado, and it's one of the street foods that you can get here in Seoul. And Seoul is fairly hygienic. South Korea in general is a pretty hygienic country if you're a foreigner traveling. So street food is quite affordable. There's a number of different tasty looking options, but the Potato Tornado is as far as we've ventured so far in the street food area, and it's delicious. It's essentially like potato chips that have been recently fried on a stick.
Yeah, and I will say, just from getting a quick glimpse of a street food market here compared to Taiwan, there seems like quite a bit more appetizing options here in Korea. I saw, there's the potatoes, deep fried crabs, which I know you can also get in Taiwan. There was these interesting, like, eggy tortilla looking things. All sorts of good stuff, but it looks delicious. So I think Seoul, especially, and other places in Korea, a great place to go check out some street food.
Yeah, definitely.
Welcome to day 5 of our Seoul sojourn. Today we don't have a ton going on. We are going out to find a cafe to do some work at this morning, and then we're going to do a bit of exploring to go deeper into the Myungdong area that we went to last night. Like we said on the earlier clip, it's cool. Heard a lot of good things about it, so we're excited to kind of go check it out more. Hopefully find a cool place to work for a few hours. Maybe do a bit of shopping. And then later today, Brock, who we met up with in Taiwan and who's been on this podcast before, is also going to be in Seoul. So we're going to meet up with him somewhere along the way and maybe go out for dinner or something like that.
Yeah, maybe have some sort of an adventure. So the day is fairly unstructured. All we know is that we're heading towards Myungdong area, which is actually the area that I wanted to stay in. We're closer to Seoul Station, which is only 2 stops on the metro, or a 15-minute walk from Myungdong, so not far. But it's kind of the place that when you read about accommodation comes up the most frequently. It's also a little bit more expensive because of that. But
Myungdong is.
Yeah, Myungdong.
Seoul Station's cheaper, yeah.
Yeah, Seoul Station's a little bit cheaper just because it's not in Myungdong. But we're going to head over there and find a coffee shop to work in, maybe do a little bit of exploring in that area. Like Ryan said, maybe some shopping, and then check out another area. We still really want to go see Gangnam area and Hongdae. So we will check in with you a little bit later.
So we are just finishing up a couple hours hanging out in Myungdong. We went over to Myungdong to do a bit of work at Cafe Bene, or Cafe Bene, not really sure how to pronounce that, but it was a cafe that was recommended to us from friends who used to live in Seoul, and they specialized in the sweet potato latte, so I gave that a shot. It was pretty good. And then we headed out onto the streets of Myungdong to do I guess, a bit of shopping, as you do, and to eat some street food. Do you want to share a little bit about all the different things that we ate on the street?
Sure. So on the Myungdong strip, there's a whole bunch of different street vendors and people selling clothes as well as food. So the first thing that caught our eye was some kimbap. We'd been on the lookout for kimbap, and we found a little place selling it. So kimbap is effectively like Korean sushi. You can get it in kind of like the triangular form at the convenience store or more in a roll form, and you can get it in all types of stuff, but it comes usually with meat or spam or some other stuff that you wouldn't find in a Japanese roll of sushi. So we got kimchi and beef with pepper, and then we actually went back and got, what was the other? Tuna?
Tuna, yeah.
And pork kimbap. And so a little bit down the strip from kimbap place, we found a spot selling sweet potatoes. So they fry up the sweet potatoes, and then they must caramelize them with some sort of sugary hot stuff. So you end up with a stick full of caramelized sweet potatoes, and it kind of tastes like eating marshmallows on a stick.
I don't know. I don't taste the marshmallows, but it's definitely like a sweet potato instead of your traditional like salty one with like chipotle mayo or something that we would have at home.
And then the next stop after that was to a place selling fried soft shell crab. So for, I think it was 4,000 won, or about $4 Canadian. You get a small little container full of these deep fried little crabs, and you just go to town and eat the whole thing. So pincers, bodies, everything. It's actually pretty good. You get a nice soft chunk in the middle, and then the other bits are kind of just crunchy, but pretty tasty. And then we also got some fruit. And so I mentioned this before, but after being in Taiwan and seeing some of the street food, kind of get a bit of an unappetizing vibe. But here in Korea, almost everything we were looking at looked delicious, except for a few weird octopus things. But there's lots of good tasting options. I felt like it was one of the first like street food markets we've been at where I'd be like, oh, I want to eat that, I want to eat that, I want to eat that. So really good food.
So yeah, now we are walking back to our place, which would be about 2 stops on the metro, but we're gonna walk because it's a beautiful sunny day here today, probably high 20s in Celsius, like 28 maybe. Head back for a little bit, have a bit of a breather because Myungdong is very crazy, very overwhelming, and then try out a new area for dinner tonight. So we will check in a little bit later.
So we made our way back to the apartment, met up with Brock, and then headed over to an area of the city called Hongdae for dinner and a bit of an adventure for the night. And then we check in on the start of day 6, which Amanda refers to as day 5. There's no 6s in Korea, so there's 2 5s. And recap that and talk a little bit about our adventures the next day.
So today is day 5 in Seoul, and we had a bit of a slow morning. We slept in, and then we made our way out to see a little bit more of this beautiful city. And we were headed to the palace, and what we did not realize is that the palace is closed on Tuesdays. And so we have Brock from Backpack with Brock here with us. Hello, Brock.
안녕하세요.
That means hello in Korean, which he has now taught us. Brock, what's your impression of South Korea been so far?
Well, I'm finding the language barrier a little trickier than I have through other parts of Asia. However, the food is outstandingly delicious. The architecture is also quite good. And actually, public transportation, because I've been going all through the country, has been some of the best I've ever come across.
Yeah, we found about the same, although we haven't done anywhere but Seoul. Can you tell us a bit about the south of Korea?
Yeah, I went to Busan, saw the fish market and whatnot, and went to another city called Daegu, and pretty similar to Seoul in a lot of ways, except it's more central, so it gets quite a lot hotter. And as per many people's recommendations, stayed in a love motel, which I don't think it needs much more description other than you can rent it by the hour. But it's sort of a rite of passage here in Korea.
I'm glad that you've had that rite of passage because we decided to skip it. Is it true that there's mirrors on the ceiling?
Mirrors on the ceiling, the walls, there's blackout windows. Everyone gets a little care package with all the things you might need. My bed had a heater in the mattress and some racing photos on the wall, computer, TV, you name it.
Computer. Mm-hmm. All sorts of things you can do.
Just send some emails or something.
Yeah. That's going to be one of the things
Yeah.
that you pull up on your
Wikipedia
on your
or something.
computer. But yeah, I think South. I don't know. I don't feel like it feels that much different. But the thing I focused on was the food. But I don't think I knew enough about whether it was, if the food changes a lot in the north or the south. Oh, and noribang, Korean karaoke.
Noribang just sounds like you're going to bong nori, which is seaweed.
Yeah, noribang sounds kind of like a drink.
It does,
Like
yeah.
sake bong or something like that.
Oh, yeah. You gotta have yes.
Yeah, you keep saying it, and I'm like, noribang. What's noribang again?
Like, do I eat it? Do I drink it?
How do I engage with noribang?
Yeah, with some soju.
Yeah.
Lots of soju.
And so on that topic, we went to Hongdae last night, which is like the young district. There's a university there, so lots of people out and about. And we saw something very interesting, which was called Happy Balloon. Does one of you want to talk about Happy Balloon?
Yeah, so we were walking up the street, and there was like a crowd around a table, and we like poke our heads in, and it's a guy with a whipped cream canister filling up balloons, which all these little Korean young adults are taking and then inhaling. And so we did a bit of inspecting. Turns out that it's nitrous, and that's like the thing to do here on weekends.
Yeah, we thought it was helium, so we were watching this girl inhale, and she's like inhaling a lot. I'm like, you don't need a lot of helium to make your voice go cool. And yeah, it turns out it's actually like a hit to make you high.
Yeah.
But like a quick high, so I don't know. They were trying to convince us to do it, but we're like, no, we're good.
No,
It's
it seems like there's no way that can be illegal. Like you're selling inhalants on the street.
legal.
Oh yeah,
No way
it could be legal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, the guy was making a mint. He was so busy.
Yeah, he must have made like 30,000 won, which is like $30 just in like the 3 minutes we were there. But yeah, and now we are currently at Namsanggol Hanok Traditional Village. Nailed it.
We've already seen some people walk by in traditional outfits.
Yeah, what do you guys think of the traditional architecture?
Reminds me a lot of Japanese buildings.
Yeah, they're, how would you describe them? It's kind of like a sloping upward steeped roof with some wooden tile things on them, and then it looks like the sliding doors where you would stay on the floor. I heard that if you stay in a traditional Korean house here that they actually have heated floors, so it's quite pleasant to be on the ground sleeping.
Yeah, it's very pretty. It's kind of quiet up here, but I
Yeah.
don't know how old it is, but
Yeah, and it's right by the Myungdong area, so you kind of get like a quick taste of the old Korea and then head over there to check out some of new Korea.
Yeah, and so we're going to do that and then make our way over to Gangnam a little bit later to meet up with Tanya. And then we're going to the DMZ tomorrow. How are you guys feeling about the DMZ?
I'm quite excited personally. What about you, Ryan?
Yeah, I'm also... It's probably like the thing I was most interested in coming to Korea. So I think it'll be really enjoyable. We've got like a full day of learning about North Korea, learning about the DMZ, and getting to actually go experiencing it. And one of the things that's weird about coming to Korea is like hearing about North Korea so much in the news, and then you open up your Google Maps and it's like, oh, it's like right there. It's like 100 miles from Seoul. So it'd be weird to like go where you can like look into North Korea.
And at one point, technically step over the border?
Yeah. And so I think it'll be really good just to like kind of make this like abstract idea about the DMZ and what's going on between North and South Korea, to make it real, to learn a lot more about it.
There might be a North Korean defector on our bus at one point, so maybe hear a bit of that story. Obviously, also, we're going to be hearing and seeing everything from the South Korean perspective. So you kind of have to always kind of just have that a little bit in the back of your mind, because any country can have its own little bit of propaganda or whatnot, but I think at the end of the day, it's pretty clear what we're dealing with, and to be in the demilitarized
Zone.
So, what's the M for? Oh,
D.
M.
Demilitarized.
And the J,
SA.
which stands for
Joint Security Area, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's the actual area that you cross into North Korea, right?
It's where they have meetings between North and South Korea in that little room.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting because, say something happens between North and South Korea that causes tensions to be high, there's a chance that we could actually not be able to go there because they don't let tourists go there or foreigners go there when there's high tensions. So.
And we saw a news blurb last night about North Korea shooting some...
Yeah, they just tested another Scud missile, and they've been testing missiles all month, so...
Can't wait for tomorrow.
Interesting time to go, yeah.
Yeah, good times ahead. All right, so we will check in a little bit later. So it is 8 a.m. and we are currently en route to the DMZ. So we're starting our day by making our way to the train. We're going to train to our meeting point, get all checked in with our passports and whatnot, make sure our apparel is appropriate, and then we'll be on our way.
We are on the bus with the tour on our way up to the DMZ, and we are about 10 minutes away from the first stop, which is the Unification Bridge. So fairly quickly as you get out of Seoul on the highway, you get to a point where you can see you're driving up the highway with the big river along your left side, and there's just a really big military fence with a whole bunch of guard posts along the way. And probably after about 40 minutes on the bus, we've hit the first spot where you could actually see North Korea across the river. Not really much because it's really smoggy and there isn't much going on over there, but just a guard tower. So it's kind of a interesting thing to be like, oh wow, this place is right over there. And on our bus we had a woman who had defected from North Korea or escaped answer some questions. So it was really interesting to hear her perspective and about kind of her adventure. But not really adventure, just built the obstacle she had to overcome to get down here to South Korea. What have you thought so far about the tour?
Yeah, I would echo you that it's pretty crazy to be driving on this bus and then all of a sudden the tour guide goes, look at the left-hand side of the window, there's North Korea. And I was watching it on my map and I was like, holy crap, we're getting closer. So in the middle of my recap clip talking about what my first impressions were of the DMZ and learning more about North Korea, our tour guide started talking and she continued talking for a number of minutes. So that is obviously not usable content for you guys to listen to. So we're going to continue our recap live from Canada. And so one of my biggest first impressions from our DMZ tour was just this sort of anxiety and, I don't know, kind of excitement and nervousness that I felt as we got closer to North Korea, because North Korea has always been something that's just been in the media for me. And we talked about it on this episode already, but being in Seoul and looking on the map and realizing how close we were felt very surreal, because it's just something that's, this thing that we hear about. And so the first time that the tour guide said, look over to your left, that river is the border, was a really intense moment for me on that tour. And then also listening to the North Korean defector talk about her experiences getting from North Korea to South Korea was really eye-opening for me, because I hadn't really actually thought about the logistics and the fact that because the DMZ exists and it's the most militarized border in the world, people from North Korea can't just cross over to South Korea. They have to get smuggled out via China. It costs a lot of money to do so. And then once they get there, they're sold to somebody in China. So this woman that was...
Well, not necessarily. But the problem with China is China will send people back to North Korea. So they have to get to, I believe, Mongolia or...
Thailand.
I'm not sure the other countries, but they have a long way to go before they're safe. Because if they get arrested in China, they'll be sent back to North Korea. So that leaves people in situations where these smugglers can do shitty things, or, they can, get sort of kidnapped essentially, and kind of treated as slaves.
Yeah, it's horrendous to hear about and to think about. And this woman shared how she'd been sold into China, and she was there for 2 years before she made her way through Thailand, Laos, and back to South Korea. And once a North Korean refugee or defector makes their way into South Korea, they become South Korean citizens. And so she answered all the questions that were asked. She talked for quite a while, like probably 30 to 45 minutes as we drove, and shared her story, which was, like I said, very eye-opening to experience, because everything that we kind of knew comes from the media and what you read about on the internet. So having that experience firsthand was really interesting. And so from there, we made our way to the joint security area. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that experience was like actually pulling up to that area?
So as you come closer to the DMZ, you notice the security level going way up. So on that river that Amanda was talking about, you see guard posts, big barbed wire fences, and then you come up to a South Korean security checkpoint where a soldier, with full military gear and guns comes on the bus and checks everyone's passports. And you kind of make your way in further to Camp Boniface, which is it's a military base right on the South Korean side of the DMZ, and that's the access point to get to the JSA. The DMZ is, I think it's 2 kilometers wide, 1 kilometer into South Korea, 1 kilometer to North Korea. The demarcation line between the two is right down the middle, and the JSA is one of the only places right in between where there's closer interaction between South and North. So that's where you've seen the photos of these interesting blue buildings that are built literally right on top of the line. And so even going on to the tour, we weren't completely sure we were going to be able to go. You drive into the base, and she's like, yeah, we never really know what happens here, because sometimes it takes a long time. Sometimes they show up and say, oh, you can't do it. But you get into the base, someone comes and checks your passports again, and then you're just kind of sitting on the bus for a while until 2 UN soldiers show up. So eventually they did, U.S. soldiers in this case. It showed us into an area where you watch a debriefing video and then quickly shuttle you off. And then before you know it, you're standing in one of these meeting rooms at the JSA. And it all happened in a really quick whirlwind. But after that, we headed to a spot called Freedom Bridge, which is just on the edge of the DMZ as well. And we talk with Brock a little bit to recap our experience and our impressions. So we are now over by the Freedom Bridge, which I believe is just outside of the DMZ. We just got back from going in to see the JSA. The JSA is kind of that famous area that you probably see photos of with all the little blue houses that is like literally right on the border. What did you think of, or what was it like to go into the JSA?
It felt pretty intense. Like I felt like I could feel like the tension there. It's very strict. Like you're in straight lines. You have to walk. There's no photos in certain areas. They brief you on everything. You can't take photos to the right or the left or behind you, just forward. And then you walk into this blue building where you're able to kind of technically cross the line into North Korea, and they advise you, there's a South Korean soldier facing a door, and if you go through that door, you're in North Korea and they cannot do anything for you. So just the reality of that is like a little bit scary, I think. But pretty interesting experience to have had. What did you think?
Yeah, it's just weird. It's kind of like it's a place you've seen a lot of on like TV and in images and stuff. So just weird to actually go there. How about you, Brock? What did it feel like being in the JSA and having like the experience of being in this place where you've seen photos of and videos of?
You could definitely feel like a bit of tension, for sure. You're staying in a room that is, half North Korea, half South Korea, but knowing that if you go through that door, they literally cannot help you. You are in North Korea, and they have no power. They're South Korea, and the U.S. military and everyone here has no power on that side of the of the door, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said as well.
And so you wouldn't be foolish enough to go in, hopefully,
You
but
kind of wonder that, like, if you step through that door, is it like all these guns on you all of a sudden? Do people pop out of nowhere? Like, what would that experience be like?
right.
Not an experience I want to test the waters with, but
And looking up and just seeing that one North Korean military guard standing at the top of the stairs, it almost seems like for a moment I felt like, oh, is this a tourist trap? Like, are we all just... But it's North Korea. Like, this isn't like some joint project between North Korea and South Korea to, like, create a place for tourists to come. This is a legit contentious area, and for some reason we have access to come to it, which is kind of neat.
Yeah, but it is still kind of weird because, like, you go to the JSA and then you come back on the bus, and then guess what? There's a gift shop.
Yeah, there's a gift shop, and you go in and you want to buy things. And you can buy the armbands, and you can buy the, like, military backpacks, and, you know, we got some money and all that kind of stuff. So that is weird, but I guess that's just capitalism doing its job.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it's one of those places where it's like it just feels weird, and you can't, like, really describe it when you go, and then, like, afterwards you kind of just, like, look back on it, and you're like, oh, wow, yeah, start to, like... You're like, oh, wow, I actually went to that place. And then you kind of process it after the fact.
yeah, definitely. But I'm excited to see what else there is on this tour and continue to check things out. So we have just finished off our very, very long last day in Korea. After finishing up our tour at the DMZ, we headed over to the Myungdong area to get a traditional Korean meal, which is called the golbi. Galbi? Something like that. It's a dish that we would both highly recommend, though. It comes in a big kind of wok type thing and gets cooked up. It's a spicy chili sauce with some cabbage, some green onion, some sort of other green. What else is in there? Some sort of dumpling noodle
there's
thing.
like leeks, chicken. They have it. It's kind of like a hot pot thing, but it's grilled in the middle, and someone kind of keeps stirring it up. One of the best things we've eaten in here, though, kind of like eating like a delicious plate of like hot wings mixed with some potatoes and other vegetables, a few noodles.
Yeah, it's really good.
Really good. And really fun meal to go for with friends because you just all get to sit there and share. Kind of like barbecue.
Yeah, and so we also got to try soju while we were there, which is kind of like the Korean version of sake. Very strong. Came out of that like, whoa, we're in Myungdong. And from there, we made our way to a Korean sauna. And we went to Siloam Sauna, and it was really, really interesting. There's a bunch of different floors. So first of all, you walk in, you pay, you get your uniform, which is kind of like a 1980s tracksuit.
Yeah, like if you were in like grade 5 and your school was in the 80s and you had to have a gym uniform.
That's what it would be.
But the gym uniforms were all for like the grade 8s.
Yeah, so we separated men and women, and then we were able to meet on the meeting floor, which is the next one up, and get some foot fomentation, which was essentially putting our feet into hot rocks.
Yeah, I think it just like means getting it hot. But this place was really cool because it had all sorts of different things. So there's a bath floor, which is separate, but then there's
separate sexes, you mean?
Yeah, then there's the sauna floor that's got an oxygen room, a charcoal room, a really hot sauna, a salt sauna, a jade sauna,
an ice room,
all these other things. But then you've got a games room on a different floor with ping pong, fitness. There's a place to sleep. It's like the place you would go, and you could easily spend like a night there.
Yeah.
Just doing things.
Yeah, and it just cost 10,000 won, which is about $10. So super affordable for that experience. And yeah, we were able to do all of it together in our track uniforms. Outside of the pools are separate because they're naked. So we are just packing up. We head away from Korea tomorrow. What have your overall thoughts of Seoul been?
Really, really enjoyed it. Didn't really know what to expect coming in, and it's just really impressed me with the past week. The DMZ tour today was really fascinating. We've had a ton of good food, gotten to check out a bunch of different areas of the city. This is one of those cities where there's like a ton of really good neighborhoods. Good coffee places to go. lots of interesting things to do and see.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree with that.
And then how about for you?
Yeah, so I really liked how we got to explore a bunch of different neighborhoods. I really liked Itaewon and Myungdong, and just getting to try all the different Korean food. I didn't really think I would like Korean food that much. I thought it was just going to be all meat and gluten, but there's actually quite a few other options. Bibimbap can be veggie. Lots of really good kimchi options and that sort of thing. So yeah, the food's been delicious. We've had a couple of friends here, so we've got to hang out with people, and yeah, it's just been a very enjoyable week.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a place that I'd be excited to come back to if we were to lay over here or find a cheap flight on the way to Asia again.
Definitely.
Really enjoyed it.
I think we'll definitely be back.
Yeah, and would love to get out more and explore more of South Korea.
For sure.
So after our adventures at the DMZ and then at the Korean spa and dinner, we got home pretty late, and basically we packed up our bags, we said goodbye to Brock, and we went to bed for just a couple of hours before waking up to head to the airport. And after 8 months in Asia, it felt pretty surreal to be going home and not going to another Asian country. It was, the entirety of the trip was, what's next? What's next? Where are you off to next? And then it felt strange to be like, oh, Canada's next. Home is next. And so South Korea, as we said at the beginning, was our final stop on our Asian adventure. So it wraps up, 12, 13 countries in 8 months with our first stretch of time as digital nomads. Next week on the podcast, we've got an Asia overview, life update episode coming out where we'll kind of conclude our Asian adventures for this time around. And so we give you an update on what's next for us, what we're doing over the summer. And if anyone has any topic episodes that they want to hear about, or any suggestions for the next couple of months with the podcast while we're a little bit more stationary in Canada, definitely send us an email, info@theworldwanderers.com, and let us know. Do you have any final words about Korea?
Bibimbap.
That's all? Okay, see you next time.
To find more information, relevant links, and photos talked about in this week's episode, check out theworldwanderers.com.
If you have a question, comment, or feedback, send us an email at info@theworldwanderers.com. Join our community on Facebook at The World Wanderers or on Twitter at World Wanderers 1. As always, thanks so much for listening.
Have a great day.
Bye.